Hello, everybody, and welcome to my session, What's Next for Contech. I have to admit, I've never had to pre-record a session before, so I hope you will bear with me, as it's a bit of a novel experience for me. But for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to do my best to tell you all about what is going on in tech for construction, therefore the construction tech segment, both with regards to the systemic shifts that the construction industry is seeing, and also the acceleration in adoption of innovation with the current coronavirus pandemic. So buckle your seatbelts and let's get started. First of all, I wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Angelica Donati. My CV is briefly recapped on the screen. I have a background in finance and marketing, and I currently run my family business, which is focused on construction and real estate. I am also a PropTech founder, an investor, and a writer. I write a column for Forbes on the topic of tech and innovation in real estate and construction, and I'm an advisory partner at Concrete VC, a PropTech-focused VC. So I would say that I am uniquely placed at the juncture between construction and technology to be able to present this session today and give you my thoughts on where the market is at and where it's going. So before we go any further in today's presentation, I wanted to start you off with the absolute basics on Contech, the 5 things that you absolutely need to know to start going through this market and understanding how it works and where it's going. So let's start with the simplest question of them all. What is Contech? There are plenty of definitions of the term out there on the market. Some of these are broader than others. Some others narrow it down to just technology for the actual construction process. In reality, if we look at the spectrum of application and of technology that can go into construction tech, there is a lot of overlap between what we think about as construction and what we think about as property management. And it is actually impossible to consider construction tech as siloed away from the rest of technological innovation in the built environment. I personally like to define Contech as a technology used to innovate the way we plan, design, and build structures, as well as the manufacture and installation of their components. I often get asked this question: is Contech PropTech? And although it seems to be a pretty simple and straightforward question, it is actually a point of contention for many. I myself absolutely believe that Contech is indeed PropTech due to the overlap that naturally arises between the two, and which we touched upon in the earlier point. The best example I can give you for this overlap is BIM. Building Information Modeling, or BIM, is, according to Autodesk, which is one of the leading providers of this technology, an intelligent 3D model-based process that gives architecture, engineering, and construction professionals the insights and tools to more efficiently plan, design, construct, and manage buildings and infrastructure. As I mentioned before, there is an immediate overlap between design and construction, and management. Though BIM itself is not PropTech, as it is just a process, the models that derive from it and their applications definitely are. For example, maintenance for buildings that have been built in BIM can be efficiently managed using AR and AI, thanks to the accurate 3D models that are produced and the centralized data lakes that are created. So, in conclusion, yes, absolutely, construction tech is PropTech, and the two cannot be considered as separate from one another. Third, what kind of tech goes into Contech? I think that one of the biggest peeves that players in the Contech space have is that when they hear the word construction technology, most people often think only of the cutesy 3D printed houses that were all over the internet in 2017. Though 3D printing is definitely a very interesting part of Contech, and in future, perhaps, we can hope to see entire buildings extruded from gigantic printers in mere hours. For the time being, however, prefabrication, which in of itself is nothing new, is a much more realistic way in which players in the space are starting to move away from traditional methods of construction. The biggest gains I have been seeing in the construction tech space are currently being had in the management of construction processes, even when traditional methods of construction are used. PlanGrid, for example, digitizes construction workflow processes. There are startups that utilize AI for workflow management, others that deploy sensors throughout the construction process and provide a platform for management of that data. Drone technology is being deployed together with machine learning for job site analysis. Robots are tentatively starting to be used for repetitive on-site tasks. Wearable tech is used for worksite safety, and as we discussed before, AI analytics and AR, which is, by the way, augmented reality, will make the difference in the management of structures designed and built in BIM. Next up, how big is the market for Contech? In one word, the market is enormous. According to estimates that I was able to find, the global construction industry was estimated to be worth over $17 trillion back in 2017, and is forecasted, or was forecasted pre-COVID, to exceed 24 trillion in 2021. It is also an industry that is very much behind the curve in terms of innovation, especially with regards to construction methods. As we saw in the previous points, though there are significant advances being made around design and workflows, the actual construction process still relies on traditional methodologies, with the exception of the aforementioned offsite manufacturing element. 3D printing is still very much in the experimental PR stunt phase. Therefore, it shouldn't surprise you that some estimates show that even using only the Contech tools that we already have on the market, widespread adoption of this technology would mean a sector productivity increase of 40%. Finally, you might wonder, since the market is so big, or the market for Contech is so big, then why is Contech itself still so relatively small? The answer to this, in my opinion, is due to the fact that construction is a complex business. There are lots of stakeholders at play in this process: owners, designers, engineers, contractors, subcontractors, site labor, operators, regulators, planners, local government, the public, the list goes on and on. When you build something that needs to last for decades at the very least. It is much easier to sell a management platform to a real estate portfolio, since they alone decide on how they want to manage their assets, than it is to drive change in construction methods, which, if not up to scratch, can have devastating consequences, culminating in the unfortunate loss of lives. I would argue, however, that though this is a limitation, it also presents a huge opportunity. In fact, the gains to be had from innovating this massive and mostly untouched sector are enormous. Engendering disruptive change in construction is going to be challenging, as it will require a multitude of conservative stakeholders and regulators to buy into it. Investment lead times will be long, and the sums required will be high, but I suspect the returns will be enormous. Exits such as those that have been in the news over the past few years, such as the one of PlanGrid to Autodesk, Viewpoint to Trimble, and Aconex to Oracle, are just the beginning and are just the tip of the iceberg. In order to really understand construction tech, we must first understand the construction market, with all its opportunities, but also its massive limitations. Industry methods have not changed much over the past 50 years, with construction consistently at the bottom of the industry innovation rankings across industries. Therefore, the construction industry has a massive productivity issue. So much so, as a consequence of this, according to McKinsey, annual productivity growth over the past 2 decades in construction is only 1/3 of total economy averages globally. Digitalization in construction is lower than that for any or nearly any other industry. And construction profitability is also extremely low at a 5% EBIT margin. But the issue doesn't end here. The lagging performance of the construction industry is a direct result of the fundamental characteristics of the construction market. Cyclical demand leads to low capital investment, and bespoke requirements limit standardization opportunities. Construction projects are increasingly complex, so logistics needs to deal with heavy weight and many different parts. The share of manual labor in construction is high, and the industry also has a strong shortage of skilled workers in several markets. At the same time, however, low barriers to entry in segments with lower project complexity, such as, let's say, small-scale renovations or small-scale builds, and a significant share of informal labor allow small and unproductive companies to compete. The construction industry is extensively regulated, subject to everything from permits and approvals to safety and worksite controls. On top of this, lowest price rules in tenders make competition based on quality, reliability, or alternative design offerings more complicated to achieve. As a consequence to these market characteristics that I've just outlined, today's construction industry must grapple with several dynamics that impede productivity and make change more difficult. Bespoke projects with unique features and varying topology have a limited degree of repeatability and standardization. Local market structures and ease of entry have resulted in a fragmented landscape. This is both vertically and horizontally, of mostly small companies with limited economies of scale. Moreover, every project involves many steps and companies in every project with scattered accountability, which complicates their coordination. Contractual structures and incentives are also misaligned. In fact, risks are often passed to other areas of the value chain instead of being addressed, and players in the space make more money from claims rather than from good delivery. High unpredictability and cyclicality have led to construction firms relying on temporary staff and subcontractors, which hampers productivity, limits economies of scale, and reduces output quality and customer satisfaction. On top of this, it also does not solve the problem of the low skills in the industry. In light of all this, we wonder what the construction companies worry about for the future. One would hope that most of the problems that I highlighted could be addressed through innovation and the use of technologies. But what exactly are these companies worried about? According to an FMI industry report sponsored by Contech Unicorn Procore, the greatest worry is maintaining a safe job site, followed by attracting and retaining skilled labor and maximizing field productivity. According to this report, whilst job site safety is being proactively managed, firms are making little headway in addressing field productivity or talent acquisition and retention. This is definitely food for thought for the tech companies building solutions for the construction industry. In fact, a 2017 study showed that 89% of firms are facing talent shortages, up from 53% in 2013. The construction population is also aging and contracting, with young people increasingly choosing other career paths and the majority of baby boomers exiting the industry over the next 10 years. In recent times, there has been much ado about the change that is coming to the construction market. Many think, and we will go into that in more detail later, that the COVID-19 pandemic will act as a catalyst for innovation and change. According to McKinsey, we can expect 9 construction industry shifts to occur. Many industry players think these will happen in as little time as the next 5 years, and the economic fallout from COVID looks set to accelerate these changes. Let's look at them one by one. In the future, an increasing share of structures and surrounding services will be delivered and marketed as standardized products. This includes developers promoting branded offerings with standardized but customizable designs that can improve from one product generation to the next, and delivery using modularized elements and standardized components produced in off-site factories. The modules and elements will be shipped and assembled on site. Production will consist of assembly line-like processes in safe, non-hostile environments with a large degree of repeatability. To improve their margins and levels of differentiation, companies will start to specialize in targeted niches and segments. Examples of these could be luxury single-family housing, multi-story residential buildings, hospitals, or even processing plants. Why not? These segments will allow them to build competitive advantages. They will also specialize in using different materials, subsegments, or methods of construction. The shift towards specialization will also require companies to develop and retain knowledge and capabilities to maintain their competitive advantages. This means training their workforce and achieving a more specialized workforce. Companies will move to own or control important activities along the value chain, such as design and engineering, select component manufacturing, supply chain management, and on-site assembly. Companies will be able to achieve this goal through vertical integration or strategic alliances and partnerships by using collaborative contracting and more closely aligned incentives. Digital technology will change the interaction model. BIM models will lead to more decision-making earlier on in the process. Distribution will move towards online platforms and advanced logistics management. And finally, end-to-end software platforms will allow companies to better control and integrate their value and supply chains. Growing needs for specialization and investments in innovation will require a significantly larger scale than is common today in the construction industry. As product-based approaches with higher standardization and repeatability further increase the importance of gaining this scale, the industry is likely to seek a significant degree of consolidation, both within specific parts of the value chain and across the value chain. With productization, that is, turning development, engineering, or construction services into easy-to-market products or solutions, and also with specialization in the industry, having a compelling brand that represents an organization's distinctive attributes and values will take on added importance in the construction space. Productization implies a need to build off-site factories, which requires investment in plants, manufacturing machinery, and equipment, such as robotics to automate manufacturing, as well as technology. Where modular is not used, the construction site will likely become more capital intensive, using advanced automation equipment and drones, amongst other technologies. R&D investments will become more important for specialized and more productized companies. So companies are likely to increase spending to develop new, innovative products and technology. Innovation, digitization, value chain control, technology use, and specialization in end-to-end use segments all increase the importance of developing and retaining in-house expertise, which will compel players to invest more in human resources. The importance of risk management and other current capabilities will decrease and be replaced by an emphasis on others, such as supply chain management. To build the necessary capabilities, companies will need to further invest in their workforces. Greater standardization will lower the barriers to operating across geographies. As scale becomes increasingly important to gain competitive advantages, players will increase their global footprints, both for low-volume projects in high-value segments such as infrastructure, as well as for winning repeatable products that will be in demand across the world. The COVID-19 pandemic, however, might slow down the pace of internationalization, at least for a while. Last but not least, let's talk about sustainability. Though it is an important decision factor already in today's world, we are only at the very beginning of its rapid growth. Companies will increasingly need to consider the environmental impact of what they do when they're sourcing for materials, and manufacturing will become more sustainable. For example, just to give you one example, using electric machinery. Supply chains will also be optimized for sustainability as well as for resilience. The outcome of these changes will be the construction ecosystem of the future, which is visually represented on this slide in a diagram produced by McKinsey. It will change from a project-based artisanal process to a product-based standardized process. In fact, structures will be manufactured off-site. by branded product houses specializing in specific segments of users, where entire designs will be selectable from a product library either developed in-house by the company providing the service or sourced on the market. Value chains will be vertically and horizontally integrated, and they will also be very international. Digital marketplaces will cut out the middleman, and contractors will become very lean entities focused strongly on on-site execution and product assembly. In this brave new world, data and analytics will be absolutely key. This will be the case both to optimize management of the current construction process, but also in order to learn from one's mistakes and improve future design. Of course, some players will be more affected than others. Of the massive construction market we saw at the beginning, 45% of incumbent value could be at stake in the parts of the market most affected by shifts, such as hotel construction. Software providers will increase their value contribution, as well as software providers. Off-site prefabrication facilities will also increase their value contribution. On the other hand, execution-only contractors could be penalized in this change. Change will, of course, significantly vary by asset class. According to McKinsey, real estate construction volumes could grow by 15% by 2035 through a redesigned value chain. Infrastructure, which is already more technologically advanced, could grow by 7%. And for similar reason, they forecast a growth of industrial construction by only about 5%. In this second to last section of our session, we're about halfway through now, we will look at the implications of what the implications discussed so far mean for construction tech. How can the change that we have advocated for until now be achieved? Well, in their 2017 report, Reinventing Construction Through a Productivity Revolution, MGI argued that if construction sector productivity were just to catch up with that of the overall economy, there would be a cumulative productivity boost of up to 60%, translating into a 2% global GDP boost. The report highlighted 7 areas which, if acted on simultaneously, would permit us to achieve these gains. Let's run through them quickly. Regulation is considered to be an enabler for all the other efficiencies. The goals in this regard are to streamline permitting and approvals processes, reduce informality and corruption, and encourage transparency on cost and performance. Innovation and training grants are also encouraged. Today's hostile tendering processes must be replaced by a collaborative approach. This can be achieved by basing projects on a single source of truth, such as BIM, as well as steering away from cost-only based tenders. Incentives should be aligned at the project outcome level. Value engineering and standardization could be the way to limit the amount of bespoke work necessary. The MGI reports further recommend thinking of construction as a production system with as much offsite manufacturing as possible. Centralized, digitized procurement and supply chain workflows that improve planning and increase transparency will reduce delays, as well as enabling more sophisticated logistics management and just-in-time delivery. There are 4 key approaches to maximize and optimize on-site execution. One is introducing a rigorous planning process. The second is to reshape the relationship between owners and contractors. The third is improving the mobilization for new projects by ensuring that all pre-work is being completed prior to starting on site. And the fourth is to use careful planning and coordination of different disciplines on site, along with the application of lean principles to reduce waste and variability. Using BIM universally, preferably in the version of 5D BIM, coupled with the Internet of Things, driving advanced analytics and digital collaboration and mobility tools to better track progress and collaborate would be a great start to implement technology in construction. The MGI report states that on-site productivity can be increased by as much as 50% by implementing a cloud-based control tower that rapidly assembles accurate data in near real time that is both backward-looking and predictive. Finally, last but not least, capability building. The aging construction workforce, and this cannot be emphasized enough, needs to be reskilled and trained to use the latest equipments and digital tools. And it also needs to be replenished through migration into the space and into the geography that lack an adequate workforce. So, after all this, you may wonder, what do construction companies want from construction tech? Now, there is a difference between what construction companies look at when they invest in tech, as opposed to what they want when they're buying a solution. According to a different study by Procore and FMI, in the former case, they value a solution that will enhance speed and efficiency the most, while in the latter, they look for a good fit to their functional requirements. In both instances, they want something that is easy to use and cost-effective. Unsurprisingly, the biggest complaints are that the tech they work with is hard to use, doesn't save them any time, doesn't integrate with other software, and isn't accessible on mobile. The probable cause of this is that many firms are unsure of how to perform a holistic assessment of construction technology and often make decisions based solely on price. Construction firms struggle the most with low user adoption of the tech they implement. The report argues that poor implementation processes stem from mismatch of expectations relating to the roles and responsibilities of the buyer versus the provider. And to a degree, this is true. You can buy tech, you can deploy tech, but you can't expect those selling you the tech to have a transformative impact on your culture. Change ultimately comes from within, and it is the responsibility of the construction firm's leaders to align their corporate culture with innovation, both through training and through their internal incentive structure. Let's talk about the role of data. Data is the most important asset in today's world. The fabled FAANG companies have a cumulative market cap of several $1 trillion, much of which hinges on their enormous access to data and clever use of it. Despite its enormous size, the construction industry is also inefficient and technologically underserved. The result is that 98% of large projects suffer average cost overruns of 80%, can you believe it, 80%, and delays of a whopping 20 months. Dearth of data has resulted in deep inefficiencies within the sector, and construction waste amounts to 35% of a project on average. Now, there are two sides to the data equation in construction. On the one hand, data capture is becoming increasingly feasible in construction with the growing use on site of smartphones, wearables, drones, GPS systems, and other mobile solutions. But the true game changer is not the data per se. It is instead the analytics that are built on this data and the actions they engender. Better data analytics will result in a clearer understanding of costs and timelines, leading to improved budgeting, greater certainty of expected margins, effective management of time to avoid delays, and an increase in accuracy of predicted project outcomes. In order for tech and data to become winning elements of the construction lifecycle, owners must take control of the process. They pay the bills, so it's in their power to dictate how things are done. With the right kind of contractual terms, which are not just driven by price, tech and data could become the status quo, resulting in a win-win whereby the owner gets the outcome they desire every time and the contractor works better and makes more money. Before we wrap up, and I will only take a few more minutes of your time, as I realize now that we're about almost at the end of my session, let's take a quick look at the effects that the current pandemic is having on the construction market's approach to technology, innovation, and change. Industry leaders believe that the COVID-19 crisis will accelerate change in construction. According to McKinsey, 90% of decision makers believe that the construction industry has to change, and this sentiment has grown strongly over the past decade. 80% believe that construction will be radically different in 20 years' time. 2/3 of respondents to a McKinsey survey on COVID and the effect on construction and construction tech believe that COVID will accelerate industry transformation. Finally, over half of respondents to this survey have already started investing in line with the predicted industry shifts, with investments in digitalization and supply chain control being the most common. In addition, according to 2 new surveys run by Procore, construction firms have already massively embraced technological change during lockdown. 90% of organizations surveyed by Procore carried on working from home, so perhaps it is unsurprising that 75% of respondents believe that from now on there will be an increased use of collaboration technology in construction. While at home, 80% of respondents use their time to develop new safety procedures for their projects. Therefore, it is again unsurprising that 56% of these believe that another effect of the pandemic will be that, in the future, there will be an increased use of safety technology in construction. 66% of construction companies rolled out new technology during lockdown, and 94% of these saw improvements in the way their teams work and how projects are run, thanks to the tech they deployed. Finally, COVID-19 has highlighted the need for businesses to build on a singular integrated system. In fact, 86% of respondents would use one platform technology if possible. In conclusion, then, it appears that the construction industry as a whole, and Contech specifically, are at a turning point, and that this turning point is being accelerated by the pandemic that is underway. All that remains to be seen, then, is who the winners and the losers will be, both in terms of the companies that make it or fail, and in terms of the tech that becomes most rapidly commonly used. I hope you enjoyed my session. For any